Podcast promos are an incredible way to grow a podcast, but this strategy will not work unless you nail the promo itself. And the last thing you want to do is to spend a bunch of money running promos that really were never going to work in the first place. So in this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know to run an effective podcast promotion.
Here we go!
So in this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know to run an effective podcast promotion. We'll talk about how to write a great script and the checklist of everything that should be included. We'll talk about how to record so you get excellent audio for your promo. And then we'll talk about editing and polishing it. Really the full gamut of what you need to be successful. And then we'll finish off with 3 rookie mistakes that'll take any promo, no matter how good it is. So make sure you stick around to the end. All right, let's start with writing the script. Since podcast promos are so much shorter than your podcast episodes, we need to be concise. So bring your A game, avoid rabbit holes or inside jokes or a bunch of excessive banter with your co-hosts. We really need to focus on some key elements. And the best way to do this is to write a script, like actually write it out. This is what's gonna keep you on message and make sure you include everything that needs to be in the podcast promo. Now there's 5 things that you need to make sure you include in your podcast promo. First is the name of the podcast. People have to know which podcast to look up if they like the promo. Number 2 is a description, like a 1-sentence description of what your podcast is. Then you need to talk about who the podcast is for. Who's the target audience? Number 4, why people should listen to your podcast. And 5 is a call to action. And that's gonna be something like, listen to the Alban Brooke podcast over on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you tell them what to go do once they've listened to the promo. And if you're paying attention, you might notice there's some overlap between some of these 5 elements, like the call to action might include the name of the podcast. The key here is to go back through the script that you write and make sure you nail all 5 of these elements. Let's go and listen to a great podcast promo, and you see if you can spot the places where Pat Flynn hits each of these 5 elements.
Hey, it's Pat Flynn here, host of the award-winning podcast, the Smart Passive Income Podcast, which was created to help you learn how to become an entrepreneur. And in the simplest way, too. You know, entrepreneurship can be very difficult. I like to simplify things. And I interview people like Josh Hall and Shane and Jocelyn Sams and Maria Fela. Who are they? Well, they're people just like you, people who have taken action after listening to the show and have built a business that has changed their lives. And I'd love to share an episode with you that I think will inspire you to get started too. Check out the link in the description or go to smartpassiveincome.com/122 to get inspired, get what you need to get started, and change your life. You got this, and thank you.
One of the things I love about that podcast promo is the call to action, where Pat is focusing on a specific episode that he thinks will really hook his listeners. This is a strategy you can use if there's an episode that stands out that you really love. But if you've got a newer show with just a few episodes, or maybe you talk about current events and episodes become outdated, you probably can't focus on a specific episode. Instead, point people to the podcast itself, and they'll find an episode that they pick out that they would like to listen to. And the last thing to think about is your podcast promo can't be longer than 40 seconds. So for most people, that means your script should be about 80 words long. Now, we all know podcasts themselves don't have to be perfect. In fact, some of the imperfections are kind of part of the charm, but we still do our best to get great audio. And the same goes for the promo, because if the promo audio is crummy, people are going to naturally assume that the podcast is recorded in the same way. Start by finding a quiet place to record. You want to find somewhere with soft materials so that you don't get a lot of background noise or echo in your recording. A walk-in closet or hung up blankets or even just a fort made of couch cushions is a perfect place for you to record. Next, we're gonna set up our podcast microphone. If you don't have a microphone yet, maybe set up with some AirPods or even a gaming headset. If you have access to either of these, that's gonna be much better than the microphone that's in your laptop. To give you an idea of what it sounds like, I'm recording this right now on my laptop. So you can just see that incredible difference in sound. You don't want your podcast promo to sound like this. And you're gonna wanna record multiple takes of your podcast promo. This way you can play with it, make it your own, bring your personality, and pretty much guarantee that you're gonna get a better take. One thing I love to do when I'm recording, I'm actually doing it right now, is I'm just pretending that I'm talking to a friend rather than reading off a script. This is gonna sound so much more natural. And now your promo will come across like a recommendation rather than an advertisement. Once you've recorded your promo, it's time to edit and polish it. This will help keep your promo beneath that 40-second limit. It'll also make you sound professional and crisp in your delivery. So here's 3 tips to editing vocals. First, remove any awkward pauses or noises that you get in the recording. Then you want to make sure that the audio is consistent through the whole recording. You don't want it getting much louder in parts or quieter later on. And if you're just over that 40-second limit, try speeding up the audio by maybe 5%. That's enough that people won't really notice. It helps give you a couple extra seconds on the back end. Next, sound effects and music. Depending on your podcast, it might be appropriate to add a sound bed beneath the audio, or maybe some sound effects at different spots. So a sports podcast, for example, you could include the crack of the bat, cheers from the crowd. Maybe a true crime podcast could include the ominous music that something bad's about to happen. Or a life coach may just use a corporate jingle to seem familiar and friendly. If you're gonna use music or sound effects, follow these 3 tips. Make sure it matches the tone of your podcast. Make sure it's not too loud, and you've got to have the rights to the music. This is not a time to get sued over a 30-second promo. So please, make sure you have the rights to this music. Now that we've finished your podcast promo, we've made sure everything was included, it's time to get it in front of as many potential listeners as possible. And that's why we built Buzzsprout Ads. It's a simple marketplace where you can pay to have your podcast promo included on thousands of other people's podcasts. If you want to check it out, head over to buzzsprout.com/ads, where you can buy your first ad and upload your podcast promo. We'll automatically match your show with shows in the same category, so you know they're the right listeners. And Buzzsprout Ads works at any budget. You can reach 5,000 new listeners for just $100. Now let's talk about 3 rookie mistakes that can crush the effectiveness of literally any promo. Number 1, don't forget to include links to your podcast in all of the major directories. You want to make sure it's dead simple for new listeners to click a link in the show notes and go find your podcast. And don't worry, if you run a promo with Buzzsprout Ads, we'll make sure to remind you. Number 2, don't run your promo on just any show. If you decide to do this outside of Buzzsprout Ads, it's tempting to just find another show and do a promo swap. But you want to make sure that the shows are about the same size and also targeting the same listeners. A podcast targeting expecting mothers probably isn't the best to swap promos with a podcast about comic books. And number 3, don't forget to say the name of your podcast. In fact, say it twice, once at the beginning of the promo and once again at the end during the call to action. And I know this sounds painfully obvious, but I've actually listened to promos where they don't include the name of the podcast, and it just does not build the connection or the confidence that people are going to ever click through to listen to the show. Podcast promos are an incredible way to reach new listeners and to grow your show. If you want to learn more about Buzzsprout Ads, then check out this video where I walk you step by step through the entire process. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time, keep podcasting.